what's up everybody? Welcome back to Simple C10, and on today's episode we're going to install the raised tilt bed floor onto Lucky. So if you want to make your bed wood go from this to this, you'll want to stay tuned and watch this do-it-yourself video. This is going to be a step-by-step video on how to install a raised tilt bed floor onto your C10. So all it's going to require is a little bit of metal, a couple pieces of plywood, some hinges of your choice, and then some bedwood slats that are going to make the plywood look like slats. You don't have to follow this guide exactly. Some of the things that I purchased are a little bit on the more expensive side, so you can use this in your own way to make your own tilt bed floor. This is really just a guide of how I did it, and I hope it inspires you to do a raised tilt bed floor on your truck. Before we jump into the install of the raised bed floor, I wanted to shout out a couple of the partners that made this build possible. So Tin Man Fabs is the one that fabricated the raised bed floor tubs, and they look awesome. Check these things out right here. These are going to be available on my website, simpleC10.co. They're perfect for those that follow my do-it-yourself raised bed floor video or this tilt bed video. They're the perfect size for those that are following those steps. So go to the website, purchase the tubs. We'll have them out a couple weeks. And thank you, Tin Man, for providing those for this build. They turned out awesome. I really appreciate that. The second person I wanted to point out is Taylor's Colors here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. One of the best body shops and paint work that you'll get in Middle Tennessee, or really in this whole region. So thank you so much to Dale and the team over at Taylor's Colors, and also Robert Hoffman at Cabin Wood Carpentry. He's the one that CNC'd all the plywood that you're about to see right here. Check out this video. Robert took my design and put it on a CNC and cut out the slats, the plywood, and even drilled the holes. But don't worry, if you don't have a friend with a CNC or a cabinet shop near you, you can just mount these slats directly on top of the plywood and not have to worry about CNCing. You could also route these out yourself in a straight line. A lot of different ways to do it, but thankfully Robert at Cabin Wood was able to hook me up and help me out with this build. Next, let's walk through the materials list. And the first thing that I want to point out is this raised bed floor is not regular hardwood. This is a plywood bed floor. I got this idea from Jason Venata from Venata Fabrications. He did an awesome job on this truck. So when I was making the design for it, I said I definitely want to use plywood. But whenever I started to look into plywood, there's a lot of interior plywoods, or the exterior plywoods are really rough. They didn't give me the kind of bedwood look that I wanted. So I started doing some more research and found a marine grade plywood. It's called Akume by Aquatech. And if I'm not pronouncing that right, I'm sorry. That's kind of how I read it. Akume from Aquatech offers a great 3/4 by 4x8 sheet of plywood. You can order this online. It's actually made for boats or anything like that that's marine grade. So I used that. I ordered that from my friend Robert at Cabin Wood. You can get it online. A lot of your local wood places may have it where they can order it. I ordered 2 4x8 sheet pieces, and that gave me enough wood to have the 2 sides and the middle section. So you'll want to get a marine grade plywood if you want this to last long term. So I'm hoping by staining and putting a clear coat on top of the marine grade plywood, it'll last even longer. The next thing I got was steel for the subframe. So I got 2 8-foot pieces of 2x1 steel, 3/16 thick. Also got 2 8-foot pieces of 1x1 steel that's 3/16 thick. And what I'm going to do is use those for the back and the front sections where the scissor hinges are, and also where I'm going to put the steel back piece. And I'll show you that later. On Lucky, I used a LS Fabrication scissor hinge. I see these used all over the place now. I was lucky enough to find some on Facebook Marketplace for $250. They're normally about $400. What the LS Fabrication scissor hinge does that other hinges don't do, a regular hinge is going to do this, and it's going to angle it up, where the front of the bed would, whenever you angle it up, it's going to hit the front of the bed unless you leave a pretty big gap. What the LS Fabrication scissor hinge do, whenever it goes up, it kind of kicks it out from the bed That way it's not hitting the back side of the bed. So it's kind of, as you go up, it pushes it out and then goes up. And that's what I wanted to make sure I didn't run into any issues. This option is a little bit more expensive, but on this Lucky build, I really want to take this to the next level with everything. So I went with a scissor hinge. I wanted to try them out and give my honest feedback. For the bed slats, what I used is the Speedway Universal size kit. So they come a little bit longer and you cut them down to size. It has the T-tracks that go inside the tracks that have the bolt that sticks down, and you don't see any of the bolts from the top side. That was really the look that I was going for, and it allowed me to put them on top of the plywood with the bolt sticking through the plywood and the washer and the nut on the bottom side to hide it. This is really important to make the plywood look like regular wood, because you need those slats on it to make them look like planks. You can also use a router, 1.5-inch router, and router out the little grooves into the plywood, and I think that really makes the plywood look like real wood when you do that. The stain that I used on this truck is from Varathane, and the color is Kona. And then the clear that I use is a Hellsman's exterior clear in gloss. You'll also need some random paintbrushes, staining pads, or whatever you prefer to use while staining and clearing the wood. You'll need some tape, and then some assorted tools like a jigsaw, welder, sander, drill, angle grinder. You'll see all the things that I use on the video, and just use what you have at the house that gets the job done. I like to use 220 to finish off the wood. That's the main thing, is after you cut it, use some 220 or something to go around the edges, because you don't want plywood edges kind of flaking up. You want all those smooth. That's the majority of the things that you're going to need to do this raised bed floor, but I want to go back to where it started with the design. You may remember me posting this reel and the picture online about the bedwood design, and I had measurements, and I really wanted a vision for this, and that's half the work, is sitting down and drawing things out, getting the perfect measurements. And this actually really helped me by mapping this out on Canva. That's what I use for this design here, is on Canva. I really like that program. So here's the designs for the whole bedwood that I'd come up with. I posted these on Instagram and I shared them on a reel, and these actually really helped me because I took the designs and I gave them to the guy at Cabinwood, Robert, and he was able to take it directly to CNC and make it happen. If you're not doing CNC, then screenshot these plans right now, right here, and go ahead and you'll have all your measurements for a 60 to 66 truck and exactly how to do it here. So after I ordered everything and got it here and I picked up the wood, it was time to head over to RS Restorations, where Zach was helping me do the exhaust on Lucky, and it was a week before SETN, and that's where we're going to jump in. This is like 2 days before SETN that I'm installing the bedwood, and I'll walk you step by step through the remainder of this video. All right, first thing I'm going to do is measure this front part of the bed lip to lip, and what I mean by that is on top of this ledge right here all the way to the edge of the bed, because I want these metal strips, the lip of them, to sit on top of the lip, and then I'm going to weld them in. So this is going to be 74. So what we want to do is cut a metal 2x1 to 74 inches, and then cut about 1 inch off of each side. Go ahead and do that 74 first. Make sure the edges are square. All right, from here, what I'm going to do is measure 1 inch. And what I want to do is just leave just a flange from the top, just an overhang with 1 inch cut off, with just an overhang to set down onto the ledge and then weld it in. It'll help hold it in there, and it'll help that we have a solid surface all the way across that's flat. If I were to cut it off and then just put it up against the side of the bed, sometimes that bed ledge, it won't be perfectly on there, so then the bed would try to get off. So I like to do it like this. This is what I mean by a ledge, just an inch, and this is gonna hang on that ledge. I like to do it like this because it gives us something to weld to. It holds on there, and then the boards will sit all the way across on this instead of trying to weld this part to the ledge. I want to get as accurate as a measurement as I can on this back bar. That's what I'm measuring for and going to cut right now. So what I did is I measured from this place right here to the top of this to the top of what that bar is, and it's 10 5/8 is what this bottom piece right here to the top of the metal. So I need to go back here and measure the same thing from where this metal is to 10 5/8. And now what I want to do is measure again from there to there, just to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to make it 65 3/8, a little bit bigger, and I can always grind it down to make it a little bit smaller. 5 3/8. It's about right there. Right there is on the money. So I need to get those tacked in, because what I want to do is take the wood and lay it on these two front and back slats and make sure everything is square. And then I can come in and I'll have to cut out around these pockets on all four corners. I'll have to cut out a little of the plywood on the corners to get it to fit nicely in there. But once I get the front and back slats, I can put all three pieces of the plywood in there and mark where the center piece is and get everything right where it needs to be, and I can clamp it in and then figure out where I need my cross slats to be. That'll be going that way. That will hold in the side pieces. So yeah, all I'm doing is taking out this front piece because I know where it's going to need welded at, and just grind down the metal around it, and I'll weld it in. I'll cover all this stuff with some welding blankets, come in here and weld it in to the best of my ability, and then I can come back and paint all this with that truck bed coating again. All right, it's kind of hard to get this back bar to stay where it needs to go. So I'm gonna cut two of the 1x pieces, the 1x1 steel that I plan to use as a support here on the back. So I can cut both of those and I can put them under this bar, and I'll know that both of them are exactly where they need to go. So the height 10 and 5/8 minus the thickness of the actual bar is going to be, I'm overthinking it, they're an inch thick. 9 and 5/8 is what I need. So I'm going to cut 2 9 and 5/8 of the 1x1, and I'll use that to help prop up this piece, and I'll know when I tack these in they're exactly what I need. So these are going to be used to help hold up this crossbar when I tack it in place, because those magnets, this bar is a little bit too heavy for the magnets. And this will actually allow me to get it perfect on both sides. This is what I needed. And then I will use these to be 2 crossbars on the bottom to support that bar back there. I'll have 2 more in the front the same way that hold the tilt bed. And then these will help me hold on a filler panel in the back. I want to have a steel filler panel that I'm going to get from somebody, and it will hide the hole that's in the back. So that's what the back is going to look like right here. You can tell it's already solid. I can already push down on the whole truck with it. That's just with the top and the side welded in. Do the same thing for over there. Once we get everything kind of where we want it, then I'm going to come around and weld the bottom sides and the front side. But this is what I want right now. It's perfect. Center right there. So here's what I'm doing. I want to mount this metal piece on the bottom side of this, and onto this metal piece I'm going to mount the scissor bracket like this. So this will be like this. There's going to be a 1x running up from the bottom of the floor to this, mounted to this, and then this bracket is mounted to the plywood, and this is going to be the tilt mechanism. So what I need to try to do is go ahead and hold this bracket up to where it needs to be, kind of, and see where this fits, to find out where we need to mount those little metal bars. So I've got the bracket. I made this bracket to have this center part to be able to bolt in to the center point here, because I wanted everywhere it bolted in to be in one of these tracks, so I can hide it with the steel bars that go down it, the strips. But here is the bar. Just imagine that bar that goes across, that's that bar. And I don't want this metal piece to be on top of that bar because then it'll kick up the back of the bed a little bit. So I had to position this bracket past this bar, so that's 2 inches, and then bolt in the scissor hinge here because that's where it's going to bolt into the wood, and then set it up somewhere where I can weld in these 2 bars up and down on the front of the cab to bolt these 2. So that's why I laid all this up here and got the bar on there like that. You can see that this isn't exactly flush. There is a little bit of an angle, but that does give me a 90. So I think that's the winner. It'll still hinge and everything correctly. It just needs to be off just a little bit to be able to do what we're doing here. So I'm gonna measure the gap in between these 2 bars, then measure center of where that wood piece is, and then try to tack these into place. And then if I can get those welded in, I'm gonna take this little bracket that we have here and just try to bolt it in to what we have there to see if everything lines up. If it does line up, then I can take this bracket and drill some holes to mount it into this centerpiece. Because I really want to get the centerpiece where it needs to go and then trim the side pieces accordingly. Okay, these are 18 and 7/8 outside to outside here. But what I need to do is the hardware with these that's gonna hold it to the bedwood is bigger than what that hole is. So I'm gonna go through, I need to drill out these 4 holes, this center 2 holes, and these 4 holes to fit this size bolt. So I'm gonna do that now over here. All right, here's the front of the wood. And what we want is this little piece is gonna be just like this. Just imagine this is the bottom side. So this metal piece is gonna be on the bottom side, and then this bracket is gonna be on the bottom side as well. All right, we flip the plywood over and put the metal piece on here. We've got the scissor hinges mounted to the wood, and I put this little crossbar in here the same way that we have the crossbar in the front. Everything lines up the way that we have it here. So I want to go ahead and drill our holes right here. And then we'll take this whole piece over to the truck, line it up, center it again, and then bolt these little brackets in here, or at least get a bolt through them, and then tack them into place take out the bolts and then weld it all the way in. More days till the show. One more day. I'm tired. I just wanted to be done with this thing. I don't want to do this anymore. So I put the panel on there and I had the hinges bolted in. I had bolted in these 1x1 channels and then just set it in the bed and got it centered. And then I went in and I tacked in those metal pieces. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and cover up everything, weld those into the bed, and then I can continue on with the other pieces of metal. All right, I got those welded in, top and bottom. Everything is solid. And now I'm going to measure from that rod to this one and cut the 2x1. And we're gonna make a strip this way and we're gonna weld that in. And that's gonna be what the side pieces sit on. And we're gonna put it right where the middle section can sit on it, about 1/4 of an inch, and then the rest can sit on it on this side. I don't want to split the difference because on the edge of the boards, this is where the metal strips bolt in. I don't want these bolts hitting the metal part down here. 73 1/4. We've got those crossbars welded in. Those two are for the tilt bed, the scissor hinges. These two are for holding the side sections of wood. So the side sections of wood will sit on here and leave about 1/4 of an inch outside for the middle section to sit down on as well. And nice little weld on those. I think I do better with Zach's welder over here. But yeah, we've got that. I'm gonna go ahead and mock up the sides. All we have left as far as metal goes is to weld in 2 of the cross slats on both sides that will hold the tub. And we'll bolt in the tub into the wood and then through the metal, and that'll kind of hold everything in place. All right, now we're measuring for our 2 crossbars that are gonna go here, and that's what the tubs are gonna sit on. So 40 is right in the middle of where the tire is. So we need to go 15 inches out, which is 55, 15 inches in, which is 25. And now will give us edge to edge where our tubs are gonna be. So what I wanna do, since we're using 2 inches, I'll go 1 inch before and 1 inch after and just center it with where the edge of the tub is gonna be. All right, the next step is cutting out the wood on these side pieces. So we need to measure right here. This is 4 inches deep and 1 across. We'll want to notch that out and then also notch out this back piece. Like a glove. We're getting ready to cut the tubs for these, so I'm gonna go get the tubs and we're gonna lay them on top of the board, and I'm gonna trace it from the inside to get the pattern that I need to take the jigsaw and cut it out. So Zach and his team at RS Restorations had a lot of work going on this day, so I just had to record, and I'm gonna do voiceover for the rest of the video to explain these steps because I don't want you to miss anything. So as you see right here, these are the raised bed floor tubs from Tin Man Fabrications, and these things look awesome. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put them on the board and I'm gonna measure the inside and use that as my cut lines for the jigsaw. So I'm going to measure the center of the tub needed to be at 40 inches on here. So I centered the tub where it needed to go. I'm going to go ahead and clamp it down to the board and trace my line, and then take the jigsaw and cut out the inside. That way I can mount the tub there. But after I got all my measurements and I got it clamped down, probably the hardest part of this whole process was drilling into the tub. A freshly painted tub from Taylor's Colors. He did a great job on painting these tubs, and then for me to have to clamp them down and then to drill through them into the wood, that was very nerve-wracking for me to have to drill through newly painted stuff, but I knew it had to get done. So you can see me here, I'm tracing the inside of the tub. I used some rags to clamp it down without damaging it. After clamping these down, you'll see that I measure to know where to mount my bolts that go through the tub. So it doesn't really matter what measurements you use right here. It's going to go through the tub, through the wood, through the metal, and then bolt in. I think I used 5 inches off the front and 5 off the back, and that seemed to give me a pretty good placement. Just use whatever measurements you want on this. If you want 2 bolts on each side and 4 in the front or 3 in the front, whatever you want it to look like, just evenly space them out. I use some carriage bolts, some stainless ones that I got from Lowe's with a washer on them, and those ended up looking really good. I use a lock washer with a nut on the bottom side. That way it pulls tight. If you drill the hole a little bit bigger than the carriage bolt square part, it will pull it into the wood and kind of lock in the carriage bolt, which works really good for this setup. Now you can see the hardest part of this is I'm trying to drill the holes into the tubs without scratching them up. That one right there, that kind of fell through. I was worried about that one when I first drilled it through, but it was all right once I got the washer on there. But just take your time with this part. If you want to use some kind of cloth or blanket to cover up the tub, that's fine. I just like to take my chances and live life dangerously here. But I did put my hand in between the drill spinning and the tub, but I actually got through all of this without damaging it, so thankful for that. After I trace the line on the inside, I just use tape on the edge where I'm going to use the jigsaw so the wood didn't flake up on the sides. That's something plywood's known for. If you try to cut against the grain, then it tries to kind of flare up on the sides. Whenever I got to the corners, I drilled a hole in the corners. That way I could put the jigsaw back through the hole and then cut the other part. So I just did a square cut because the tub is going to hide everything that you see here. I went back and used my DA with some 220 on it and just did the corners and the top of the wood and got it sanded really nice and smooth and getting ready for the stain on the side pieces. After I got everything cleared, it was time to install the bed slats onto the plywood. So this is the Speedway Engineering bed slat kit. It's a universal kit. I believe they come 80 inches long, and then I had to cut them down to 77, so just a little bit. But these should work for the majority of builds. So right here, I was just lining everything up and then I cut off the ends of all the different pieces. And then it comes with all the T-tracks that you need, and this is what I really like about these, is you can slide in all these T-tracks. Sometimes they're a little bit tricky to get started, but you'll get a rhythm down. I usually use the end that I cut to slide them in. It was a little bit easier. You're just going to count however many holes you have on your board, slide in that many T-tracks, and then just lay the track down on the board and start with the first one and then just kind of work your way to the end. It takes a second to really get down the rhythm to get these to slide into all the holes, but it's not a lot of effort once you get a pattern down. But all you're doing is lining those up. It'll slide down. You're going on the bottom side to put in the lock washer and the washer and the nut to hold these into place. So as you're tightening these down, if you have a kind of a tight hole that you're trying to put them into, whenever you're clamping them down, it will pull this down into the board. Just make sure when you're tightening them down, don't tighten certain ones more than others because you'll have a wave in them. So what I try to do is just get at kind of board level with it. You see I'm looking down the board and tightening them up to make sure I keep that even across the board. After I got all the tracks installed, this was going to be the hardest part of this whole install, was getting the board mounted to the truck. So thankfully I had Zach's help here to pick up this board. We're going to carry it over there and try to slide in the scissor hinge into the truck. And you can see that on the right side, that scissor hinge that's hanging down. So we're going to try to line that up with the metal brackets, the 1x1s that we had. But it was really tricky to get that to slide in. So we basically had to just hold it up there very close, and I had to crawl into the truck and hammer them onto the 1x1s. It was a little bit tight. I like a tight fit on the hinges, but it was a little tricky. You can see me right now crawling in the truck. I get in there and then kind of banging them in there a little bit, and then getting a couple of the bolts to slide through the hinge and then tightening them down. And once I get them tightened down, then I can crawl out and then we can test everything. But at this point, you'll need some help to hold up the board. It's not super heavy, but you do need an extra hand to help hold it up. You can see Zach here posing, looking at his black truck that he just finished for SETN. But it's good to have a nice friend. Go ahead and do that hair swoop, Zach. Love you, man. But after I got it finally bolted in, this was kind of the defining moment. Is this thing going to slide down and go into the correct placement? And thankfully it did. It lined up almost perfectly. There's a couple little small adjustments that I made, but I was really excited to see this thing laying down and that everything lined up. I was testing it a little bit here, just how heavy it was to pick up and down, making sure that the tilt bed goes all the way up, all the way down, and everything worked great. The next step was installing the 10-man fab tubs on here. Again, they're available on the website, simpleC10.co. You can get these, and all I did was line them up. I was very careful because there's only about 1/4 of an inch underneath the bed rail. That's how tight it is, and I wanted it that way to get as much clearance as you can get. And this is kind of the final product right here. Check out these final photos that I took of it. I'm really proud of how this turned out. It really turned out a lot better than I ever expected. I mean, I thought it was going to look good, but the final result really blew my mind with the tubs, with how well the plywood, the wood grain looked in it, and the finish of it. Guys, if you don't subscribe to the channel yet, please go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, tell me what you think about this raised bed floor. I hope that this helps somebody build their dream truck. So that's why I do all this, is to help the community. But here's some more pictures and a video from SETN. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned, more to come on this lucky build.